This session is supposed to be a general overview of the information that you need for the process. If you have a specific case or maybe some extenuating circumstances that make your situation unique, we are here to support you, but we do recommend using the resources to connect with us after today via email or booking an appointment so that we can get into the specifics of your questions. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Sandra to start the presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'm honored to be here with you today and talk about study permit applications from outside Canada. I am an international student advisor at Western International, and I am a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. So I will walk you through the process of how to prepare your application for study permit and what are some of the characteristics of those applications. Again, as Kate mentioned, please bear with me. Hopefully the information will address the issues that you were hoping to get today from the webinar. But if you think that your case situation is a little bit more complex, you will be able to book an appointment with one of the advisors, or you can simply send us an email and we will definitely support you. So the agenda would be focused on outside of Canada applications. I will also have a few slides on study direct stream, which is typical for international students who reside in certain countries. Change designated learning institution from outside Canada. What are some of the specifics that you need to keep in mind if this is the case? What the letter of introduction looks like, a little bit about study permit, temporary resident visa, electronic travel authorization, as well as your responsibilities as a study permit holder. Outside of Canada applications. So international students should start preparing their study permit application as soon as they receive an acceptance letter. The study permit is a document that is issued by Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, which allows foreign nationals to study at designated learning institution. You probably did come across DLI often in Canada, and most foreign nationals do need a study permit to study in Canada. So there are kind of some circumstances in which it may not be needed if the program is shorter than 6 months. But again, in your case, study permit will be needed if the program is longer than 6 months. Make sure that you have all the documents you need before you apply, and you should apply definitely before you travel to Canada. Study permit is not a visa. It doesn't let international students enter Canada, so you may need a visitor visa or an electronic travel authorization. And if IRCC approves your study permit, they will issue one to you with your study permit. So often we get questions from students, well, I'm coming from a country that requires TRV, so I have submitted my application for study permit. Do I now need to apply for TRV? Basically, the answer is no, because study permit application does include issuance of TRV or an ETA if applicable. So you may have heard that IRCC has announced some recent changes with regard to study permit applications, and this is an important slide with regard to PAL as well as financial requirements. So on January 22nd, 2024, basically, this is the deadline when new study permit applications except those who are exempt, and these are mainly students who are in master's or PhD. Students are required to include a provincial attestation letter. Without PAL, study permit application will be returned with a full refund to the student. So we did talk to or kind of connected with students who have submitted an application before January 22nd. If the application was submitted before this date, it will basically take its typical application process course. But if the application was submitted after January 22nd without PAL, the application will be withdrawn or kind of returned with a full refund. We'll have a few more information with regard to a provincial attestation letter. In terms of financial minimum requirements for 2024, and this is effective January 2024, international students now need to demonstrate a minimum of $20,635, which is equal to 75% of low income cutoff. kind of this is what it's referring to, plus first year of tuition, as well as travel costs for proof of financial support in their study permit application. This has changed this has changed, as the amount before was 10,000 plus first year tuition. So now moving forward, IRCC has also been very specific that minimum financial requirements for new study permit application will be increased and will be adjusted annually to reflect accordingly. So there is more specific information if you would like to learn about minimum requirements, but this is what we know for now, and this is the approach we take when supporting international students who are applying for a study permit. So now in terms of provincial attestation letter, which is very important, again, it is, you need to know that you need to accept your offer via OUAC. You need to pay your $1,000 tuition deposit to Western. You need to complete the PAL request form, and then you will be able to download your PAL from choose@uwo.ca. So these are the instructions that are at this point pretty clear with regard to Western support to students who need PAL as part of their study permit application. Please follow these steps, and you will be able to download your PAL, which would be a key piece of document for your study permit application. Now, in terms of Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada portal, students are applying online. They will need to create an account in IRCC Portal, kind of a typical process of creating an online, being part of an online platform. You will be answering some of the questions in order to be able to proceed with submitting additional documentation that immigration will need as part of your study permit application. So again, you need to sign in IRCC portal. This is on cic.gc.ca, kind of Immigration Canada website. And then you will need to click on apply to visit, study, or work in Canada as a temporary resident. Your study permit is a temporary document, and this is why it's very important to follow the steps. Otherwise, you may be directed into an area where you may be kind of applying for a different type of document. But again, very important to click on apply to visit, study, or work in Canada as a temporary resident. You will be selecting that you're applying for your study permit, as well as that a study permit should be for more than 6 months. Again, this is where I've mentioned previously that in some circumstances, students who are coming on a short-term program to study in Canada may be exempt from study permit, and this is why immigration is screening with some of these particular questions. So again, a study permit to study for more than 6 months. Here is what the IRCC portal looks like in terms of documents that need to be uploaded. Again, often in terms of funds, for example, it should be one document. Again, you can start with perhaps some summary of where the financial resources are coming from. And, you know, again, you always start with the most, I guess, the first resource that will have the highest amount, and then you can, if there is additional support, right, like bank statements, or if your family members are supporting your academic career. So there, it would be very important to include documentation letter that the family member is allowing access to the funds for the student during their academic career at Western. And basically extremely important to upload the right documentation in the right place. Otherwise, it may compromise the processing of your study permit application. Any additional documents, we definitely put big emphasis on including a study plan. So you would like to inform immigration, the officer who will be reviewing the application, the reasons for choosing Western, why you fell in love with a particular program, and how the program will, where it will take you in terms of your academic career and professional development. So again, just a brief overview of where the documentation would need to be uploaded. In terms of study permit application documents, again, going in a little bit more details here. Acceptance letter issued by Western University, again, could be conditional acceptance for prerequisite courses. For example, if you are conditionally accepted, it means that you may take some prerequisite courses. For example, this may be English as a second language courses. You must complete these before you can start then with your main program. In that case, then IRCC may issue a study permit for a shorter time period. So you will then need from within Canada to apply for an extension of your study permit. Again, these are some of the examples when students may be issued study permit for a shorter time period, and then they will be able to apply for an extension. This is not unusual. We have students who sometimes may study longer because maybe they selected courses and do need additional term. So applying for an extension is common in Canada as long as they have supporting documentation from the university, in which case an acceptance letter is not the typical document. They would need to have a letter of current enrollment. So making sure that the officers can see the student is actively pursuing studies. Now, in terms of financial resources, as you heard me talk about in previous slide, the minimum requirement has increased now to 20,635. You must demonstrate that you can support yourself and the family members. Again, family members here, we do have often students, again, usually in graduate programs, who will bring family members. And so it's important that additional funding would be available for family members. But again, this is just a typical minimum for for a study permit for one person who is applying for a study permit, again, without family member. You can approve your funds. It could be a Canadian bank account in your name. Again, may not be typical situation if you're applying from outside. You may need to include a guaranteed investment certificate, which may be the case for Study Direct Stream. You can include the bank statements in the past 4 months, bank draft that can be converted to Canadian dollars, a letter from the person or school giving you money, or proof of funding paid from within Canada. Again, very important to pay careful attention to how you present information. Sometimes it's not really whether the student will have sufficient funds for study permit application, but how information is presented and how the processing officer will review it. If there is a missing document from a family member who is making funds available, it may bring concern. And or if the bank statements are, for example, in the name of a parent, the officer may not make connection, right? Like that this amount will be made available to students. Additional documentation will be biometrics, which is definitely a requirement for all temporary resident applications. It's normally valid for 10 years, regardless of whether you're applying for any of these documents. Again, definitely part of a study permit. So once the application is submitted, instructions will be provided by IRCC with regard to where to go to the closest visa application center or Canadian Embassy, High Commission, and complete biometrics. Again, an important part of the application. Medical exam may be required in some circumstances. We find that students from certain countries may need to do medical exam. Also, if they indicate as part of their application that they may be working in the areas where they may be close to kind of children or patients in the hospital, medical exam may be required in those circumstances. Again, just a brief overview of typical documents that are required for study permit application. Now, a Study Direct Stream does provide kind of a faster or enables faster processing. We have here that it is usually completed within 20 calendar days. In our experience of advising and working with students, it may take longer, it may take shorter time, but again, a great opportunity, to consider Study Direct Stream. There are some specific criteria, which I will address in the next slide, but again, an option for you if you reside in countries where SDS is an option. So faster processing, you can give biometrics as soon as possible, as long as you meet also the eligibility requirements. So now there are countries here listed that would be considered for taken in consideration for SDS eligibility requirements. You must be a legal resident living in one of the following countries. Now, in terms of requirements, you would need to have accepted the offer from designated learning institution, live outside of Canada when you apply, and have proof that you have paid your tuition for your first year of study. In addition to that, there is GIC, which would need to have the amount, minimum amount in the certificate, basically ensuring that you will have sufficient funds during your academic career for the first year. Now, language test is also a requirement for SDS. You can take one of these tests. Get a medical exam before you apply, as well as police certificate before you apply. And so there may be additional documents depending where your application for SDS is submitted. Again, a great way to get your study permit process faster. However, you do need to meet the requirements listed here. A language test is really not needed for your typical study permit application, but SDS has set this as requirements, as well as the payment upfront, a full year tuition along with the GIC. So in terms of requesting letter for SDS, because again, as part of study permit application, you will need to upload documentation that your tuition is paid. You can, for newly accepted students, request a letter through official Western letter for visa purposes. You do need to log into your student center using your Western user ID and password, and then you can place an order for this letter. You must have accepted your offer and have paid your first year of tuition. Again, Western's tuition schedule will come out, I think, for the upcoming year in June. It is okay to use the last year's amount of this year's fees. This year's fees are not available. We have not seen this being an issue in previous applications. So again, it's recommended that you use Global Pay to make your payment. Again, any issues with regard to requesting the letter or kind of about the process, or if you run into any challenges, feel free to reach out. There will be at the end of the presentation slide how you can contact us, or my colleagues, Kate or Tommy, if you have any questions about requesting SDS letter. Changing designated learning institution from outside Canada. If your study permit application is still in progress, you may have submitted an application and you may change your mind and would like to attend a different educational institution. It is very important to use the Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada web form. This is the way how we communicate and students communicate with immigration. You would need then to upload your new letter of acceptance so that the officer is aware that you are changing the institution. And if your study permit application has been approved, then and you're outside of Canada and you change your DLI, you must submit new study permit application with a new letter of acceptance. You must also pay all the fees for the new application. This is just the process that may be a little bit kind of challenging at times, but again, it does happen sometimes that students may change their mind and switch the DLI. Again, these are the processes in place that are introduced by IRCC, and we follow them. So if you already have a valid study permit, you do not need to apply for a new study permit if you change your DLI. Again, this is the information with regard to changing designated learning institution from outside Canada. When study permit application is finalized, the students from outside of Canada will not receive a study permit. They will receive this letter of introduction, which is the key document to travel to Canada, show this document, this letter to the Canada Border Services Agency officer who will welcome you when you land in Canada. And based on this letter, they will issue you a study permit. So applying for a study permit from outside of Canada is not really receiving a document, it's getting the letter of introduction and receiving study permit at the time of your entry to Canada. Now, the final stage in the process would be that immigration will contact you and say, we've just approved your study permit, or you actually receive information in your CIC account that your study permit application has been approved. And if you are a citizen of a country that requires temporary resident visa, there will be a slide I will talk a little bit about it. Then they will ask you to mail the passport to the processing center, where they will enter the visa, temporary resident visa. So it's sticker in the passport. So with your valid passport, valid temporary resident visa, and the letter of introduction, you will be traveling to Canada. And upon your arrival, when you show this letter of introduction to the CBSA, you will receive a study permit. And so this is what the study permit looks like. May have some conditions that are related to employment, or it could be, the name also of designated learning institution. It does include some information in there. In most cases, I would say 99% international students who are starting their program and again, approved for study permit, and the program will be full-time, will have conditions indicated that they can accept employment in Canada while studying. Again, there are some rules and regulations around the number of hours per week, working during scheduled breaks and so on. We do come across situations where CBSA officer may miss to include this particular condition in a study permit, in which case this may trigger students then later to apply for a kind of amendment of their study permit. So again, immigration may make a mistake. So again, very important upon your arrival, when your printed study permit, if you will be a full-time student and you're eligible to work, maybe you can pay attention that this is entered in your study permit application. So again, study permit authorizes you to study in Canada. Usually is valid for a period of your academic program plus 90 days. 90 days is really to give international students some time to either start new program or apply for post-graduation work permit, which is an opportunity for international students to work in Canada after they complete their program. If you need study permit longer, you can apply for an extension, as I mentioned earlier, as long as your school, Western, will issue the letter that indicates that you need another term or another year to successfully complete your studies. And immigration will look at that date plus 90 days. Then the typical expiry dates of study permit are end of July. Sometime could be November if students are still taking additional term in the summer. This is what the study permit will look like. And here are some important information. Particularly, I'm emphasizing the condition allowing students to work, because it could be a huge disappointment if we earlier in September have some sessions on job searching, working in Canada, and students have heard that they're able to, or they're applying for social insurance number to work a few hours here and there, and then they learn that their study permit may not include the condition. Again, a minor but kind of big mistake for students, because then applying for an amendment may take a few weeks. Temporary resident visa, TRV, and ETA. This is the sticker that I mentioned will be entered in your passport. If you come from a country that requires temporary resident visa, you do need to have a valid visa in your passport in order to travel and re-enter Canada. So your study permit document does not authorize re-entry. Just kind of going back to the previous slide, here at the bottom, it says this does not authorize re-entry to Canada, and students would say, so what does that mean? Can I leave with my study permit? Can I come back? Having a valid study permit and traveling back home, maybe in the first summer after the first completing the first year, would really it's something students of course do, but they need to make sure that this visa is valid. So while the temporary resident visa does not have to be valid while studying in Canada, study permit is a primary document. It is the key document to be able to re-enter Canada. And you can definitely apply for new TRV from within Canada after you extend your study permit. Again, in case if a study permit is about to expire, applying for study permit is the first step. Applying for temporary resident visa is the second step. It is not what can happen when you apply from outside of Canada, where both documents will be issued at the same time. Now, citizens of certain countries that require an ETA, this would be issued to citizens who are visa-exempt countries and is required to travel to and re-enter Canada, and it's usually valid for up to 5 years. In terms of temporary resident visa, it's usually valid as long as a study permit is approved for. In some cases, it may be longer, but again, keeping in mind that this is very important document in addition to your valid study permit that allows you to re-enter Canada in case if you plan to travel outside of Canada. Now, U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents of the U.S. do not require TRV or ETAs in terms of traveling only to the, so they don't need it to come to Canada, but there is also an agreement that allows students sometimes to travel only to the U.S. with the valid study permit, and temporary resident visa may not be valid. But again, if it's just only visiting to the US, there is an agreement between Canada and United States that allows to re-enter Canada with a valid study permit. This is only in case if international students are traveling to the US only. And in terms of international students and responsibilities as a study permit holder, this is an important slide because it really does emphasizes the importance of being compliant with study permit conditions. So the student is required to study a DLI. Again, you must hold a study permit if you're in the program that's longer than 6 months. Students may study without study permit if it's shorter than 6 months, and if you change your post-secondary institution, you must notify IRCC. So now, if the student is in Canada and decides to change DLI, they then would need to inform IRCC through the IRCC portal that they are changing designated learning institution. International students' responsibility is to actively pursue studies, so remain enrolled and make reasonable and timely progress toward completing the academic program. You do not need to notify IRCC if you change your study or change your study permit if you wish to change your program at the same designated learning institution. So, for example, you now from social science switch to science or health sciences or engineering, you do not need to inform immigration. Your study permit will continue to be a valid document. DLIs are required to report on student status twice a year. This is why that change of DLI is very important, and onus is on the student to do it, because designated learning institutions will be providing reports to IRCC with regard to international students studying at their institutions. Study permit may authorize on-campus employment if you are a full-time student, unlimited number of hours. Sometimes students may be working in housing services, facilities, so in different areas on campus. But again, they must continue to be enrolled full-time. Off-campus employment is possible only if students, again, are enrolled full-time and in programs that are of at least 6 months and leading to a degree, diploma, or certificate. The typical number of hours that students can work off-campus is 20 hours per week. They can also work full-time during scheduled break, which at Western is summer term. So the students should maintain full-time enrollment prior to that summer and then after in order to be eligible to work full-time. So again, important to keep in mind that there are conditions there are certain responsibilities that are tied to being a study permit holder, and it is important for students to be compliant with those conditions. Now, in terms of our support to all of you, we have advising services here at Western International, at Western University. Students can book an appointment. Students can visit us. We do have a lot of information during our immigration FAQ sessions that are offered, I would say every Friday now, maybe bi-weekly now. So maybe we'll switch to weekly over the next few weeks, but just only to support more students if needed. And again, please contact us, book an appointment, email us. We are here to help you. You are not alone. It may sound a little bit overwhelming when you see so many different pieces of information on the presentation slides, but again, we are here to support you and help you in this journey of applying for your study permit. Thank you for your attention. So now I will just turn it to Kate. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandra. You've provided us with a wealth of information that I'm sure students will find helpful. We invite you now, if you do have questions that weren't covered in the presentation that you're wondering about, to enter those in the Q&A. And I see some of those coming in. So I'll either answer some of them or post them to Sandra. So the first question we have, Sandra, is regarding SDS. So the student wants to confirm that Western University has a DLI. Yes, we are a designated learning institution. But they're also asking, is it compulsory to apply through SDS? And what might be the benefits of doing that? So do they need to apply for SDS if they're eligible?
They don't have to. It's really an optional kind of process. It's more just that it's convenient if you reside in one of the countries listed on the slide, and it can be faster processing. So while we know that current processing times can be 10, 11 weeks for study permit, SDS stream does allow you to have your study permit in 20 days. Again, you need to meet the requirements. You do need to have the language test, and you do need to pay upfront tuition for 1 year and have the minimum financial requirements. Thanks.
Thanks for clarifying that. We do have another question regarding getting a PAL letter. So this question is, if a student's paid their or waiting to pay their deposit, yes, the deadline for your deposit is not until May 1st, but would this impact getting your PAL? So we do encourage you, once you've made your decision, to do this as soon as you know. So take those steps. If you do require a PAL, accept your offer on OUAC, pay your deposit, and meet an English language requirement if that's a condition of your offer. These steps are required to get the PAL. So, you know, the longer you wait, the longer you're starting that study permit process. So we do encourage students to start early to make sure they have time. So yes, you do need to pay that deposit before we're able to issue that PAL. So we have a question regarding, is it possible for international students to hold 2 PAL letters to 2 different institutions in Ontario?
So there's still a lot of unknown, if I may say so. I don't think we have, we can provide the exact answer to this one. So we are still working closely with IRCC to get specific information. I don't think I have an answer for that in terms of holding 2 PALs for 2 different universities in Ontario.
Thank you. We have another question about if a student's under 18 years of age regarding guardianship or custodianship, is that something that they will need to prove or to set up?
I think it would be recommended, although I think once the student turns 17, even it's at the discretion of the officer how they will assess an application. If they're convinced that the student will have sufficient resources and is will be, I guess, well equipped to take on the academic career in Canada, it may be exempt. But I would say still, if the student is under 18, I would ensure that this is in place just in case.
Perfect. We have another question here about what criteria might make a student exempt from a PAL. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I'll also get Tony to throw in the link to our study permit FAQs for that question to be able to link to some of those exemptions that might pertain to a student situation.
Right. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so there are some exemptions, but again, they are usually for students who are already in Canada, who've graduated from or who've completed a high school in Canada and will be already held a study permit. So study permit extensions from within Canada would not require PAL. We have students who are in master's and PhD programs, so they do not need PAL. I think it really depends on what the circumstances are. So again, as Kate said, Tommy can include the link, and then feel free to reach out, as we said earlier, if you think your circumstances are different. Thank you.
We have another question here. I don't know if you know the answer, Sandra, so the student might need to follow up, but they're wondering about, they've applied to law school, and which also requires a PAL, and are wondering if they're supposed to follow the same process that you've outlined here today.
I would say so. Again, I'm not sure now. Again, I think maybe we can just connect with the student after that and kind of see in what capacity we can support them. It may be a little bit of a different type of scenario, but I think PAL in my assessment would be needed. But again, if there is something that indicates something differently, then we need to assess. Thanks.
Perfect. And like we said, we are here to help. We have those resources up on the screen here. So if we're not answering exactly the information you need today, do follow up with us either by booking an appointment with IESC, sending them an email, or if your questions are more related to admissions and your conditions, you can also reach my team at international@uwo.ca. So there's lots of support. If we're not answering what you need today, we will find you those answers that you need. We see some other questions coming in. So where can I find the PAL form to fill out? I can't find it in my portal. So great question. You'll be able to find that on your Choose portal. So choose.uwo.ca. There is a link within that portal directing you to PAL. If you're unable to find it, just reach us via email and we'll kind of show you where that tile is. So you'll be able to access that form. We also sent out an email to students that had a link directly to the PAL form. So if you're able to find that email that was sent last week, you can also do that through that link.
Kate, maybe the one with the student who received an undergraduate admission in March for the main campus management organizational studies and then returned to China and completed. I would encourage the student to reach out because I think it sounds like it's the student who may be returning. And so depending on the situation, if they already, what type of document they held, I think it may be one of the unusual cases. So I encourage the student reaches out to either our office or undergraduate recruitment, and we can then address this issue.
Perfect. And I know some of the questions coming in are really case specific, and that reaching out after today will give our advisors the time to really look at your situation and discuss with you more in depth than we're able to provide on the general information session today.
I see the one about the show to proof of funds. If I will be using my father bank statement, in this case, do I need to write letter or how I can tell? Yes, so definitely important to communicate to IRCC officer who will be reviewing and approving your study permit application that the funds will be made available for your academic career at Western if the funds are coming from your family member. If your dad is providing funds, it would be good to say this is to confirm that, you know, the following amounts indicated in bank statements will be made available to our child, right? Like, and then the name. So making sure that information is clearly stated. Otherwise, the officers, I don't think, have time to assume. So this is what we find when we meet with students, when there is sometimes discrepancy in how information is presented. Really important to be careful when you start with your application. Thanks.
Great. Lots of questions coming in, just sorting through them here to be able to share some of those via the chat. Okay.
I'm Pakistani residing in Saudi Arabia. Can I apply through SDS? I think you need to be a legal resident of the a legal resident for 1 year in the country where you would be residing. I'm not sure now, forgive me that I don't know by heart if the Saudi Arabia is on the list, but again, you can check the list and then make sure. And then again, if you need any support, feel free to reach out.
Great. And some
I see something about PR application has been filed. Can I just take this one? Should I state same in with this case, any issues? So again, when PR application has been filed, again, I would say that permanent residency application is really different than temporary resident application. So it's your responsibility to secure that you have a valid legal status during your studies. So if PR application is in process, you still would need to apply for study permit and file a typical or kind of proceed accordingly until your PR application is finalized. Waiting for PR doesn't really allow individuals to kind of study without a study permit. Sorry, Kate, if there was another one that you felt was more.
No, that's great. There's lots of questions coming in, so it's helpful to help you, to have you read through them with me. Okay.
So this one is about accepted the offer, that when can I give the deposit and when can I get a PAL?
Yeah, so in terms of paying your deposit, so the instructions are outlined in your offer letter as to how to take those next steps. As Sandra mentioned, you can make that deposit through Global Pay, which is one of the methods listed on our website. Once you accept your offer, pay your deposit, and then meet your English condition, if that is a condition of your offer, then you can submit that PAL request form to us. Okay, so the questions are winding down. The last one here. So if they've accepted their offer, made their deposit, and end up changing the decision of the program they want to accept, do they need to make a final decision on the program before applying for study permit? So Sandra, I think you had mentioned that if the program changed, you don't necessarily need to update the application.
Program change within the same DLI is really not an issue, should not really be compromising the issuance of study permit.
Right. I think that's all the questions we had open. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so in case there's any last minute ones that are coming through. Otherwise, we want to thank you for joining us today. We know this can be a bit of an overwhelming topic sometimes, and that there's questions that you have. So we want to be here to support you with that process, to make sure that you have all the information that you need to start that study permit application. All right. Looks like there's no more questions coming in. So thank you. Oh, I spoke too soon. We do have a few more coming in there.
So what we mean by the program change within the same DLI, if you now change your mind and you no longer want to be in science, you want to go to engineering, it's fine. You do not need to make any changes with regard to your study permit application. You proceed, I guess, accordingly with study permit application. It would be more an internal process here. Correct, Kate? Tommy?
Yes. So if you do have questions about how to actually change your program, feel free to reach out to us because this does depend on what time of the cycle it is. So right now, you can still add new program choices to OUAC where you applied. But if you change your mind later in the summer, we will have information on whether that's possible. Sometimes it's dependent on space availability within that new program that you're looking to switch into. We have another question here about what documents are required for PAL. So for PAL, there's no documentation that we request. That's just the steps to accept your offer, pay your deposit, and I guess documentation if you had a condition for English proficiency, but it's really just a request form. That PAL will be a document that is then used towards your study permit application.
And I can take the next one in terms of working regulations. Yes, as an international student enrolled in DLI, again, Western Bachelor of Health Science program, you are eligible to work on campus and off campus with your valid study permit. No need to apply for any additional work permit. Again, the conditions in your study permit will indicate clearly that you are eligible to work on or off campus. Again, as an international student, it's your responsibility to understand how many hours that means. So unlimited number of hours on campus where you are enrolled in school full-time and up to 20 hours per week off campus while you are enrolled in school full-time. As an undergraduate student, you're also able to work full-time during the summer break, which is again from May 1st until August 31st, provided that you were a full-time student before the scheduled break and after. So again, meaning that after the first year of completing your Bachelor of Health Science first year program, if you were enrolled full-time, you can work full-time off campus during the scheduled break before you start your second year. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Great. Okay, again, we'll give it another 30 seconds if there's any last minute questions that folks have here. If you do have questions after today, you can see the contact information up on the screen. And just a reminder that if you'd like to connect with our recruitment team about your admissions questions, you can reach us at international@uwo.ca.
We have another question.
Okay, so to pay the deposit, so if you have received an offer of admission from Western, it has a link within it on how to pay your deposit. So if you are struggling to find that, please reach out via email and we can help you locate that global pay method to be able to submit that deposit. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I want to thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you at Western this fall. Thanks so much.